Hello everyone, this is Redstone Chief. Today I'm excited to present to you the Survival Teleporter. With just the press of a button, you can teleport yourself to a teleportation site that you have previously built. For example, I have built a teleportation site that is located 200 blocks away, which you can see over there. I've also built a redstone wire beneath the ground to this button, which will transmit a signal to the teleporter. When I press the button, the teleportation site activates and teleports me to it. To reset the teleporter, just toss an ender pearl into this water stream. To make it possible to easily teleport back and forth between two locations, you can build two teleporter sites, one at each designated location. This is what I have done in this example. So as you can see, I am able to teleport back to where I started with just the press of a button. This teleporter can be used to teleport vertical distances as well. Here's an example. I have built a teleporter 200 blocks up, as well as a redstone wire connecting this button to the teleporter. When I press the button, I am immediately teleported up. Before getting any further, you will need to know about a major limitation that this teleporter has. You are only able to teleport to locations that are within your render distance. This means that if you want to build a teleporter that will teleport you something like 1,000 blocks, it will not work, due to the fact that the chunk the teleporter is located in will not render the ender pearl, which is crucial for the machine to work in the first place. For example, if I lower my view range so that the teleporter is no longer being rendered, and then press the button, the teleporter will no longer work. However, there is good news. If you build a chunk loader in addition to a teleporter, then the ender pearls that are so crucial for the teleporter to function will render. The details about how chunk loaders work and how to build one will be explained later in the video. But for now, I will show you an example. Here you can see a teleporter with a massive chunk loader surrounding it. If I give myself super speed and run to the other end of the teleporter, which I have placed 500 blocks away, then my original location is completely outside my view range. Yet, when I press this button, the teleporter still works, and I am transported back in an instant. Yes, I have literally traveled 500 blocks in survival mode in an instant. With just a little longer redstone wire, I could have traveled 1,000 blocks, or technically an unlimited distance, since there really is no limit about how long a redstone wire can be. Just to show you the power of the teleporter, I will now teleport 500 blocks again. Since I have built a chunk loader teleporter on the other end as well, I am able to teleport back and forth 500 blocks no problem. In case you have not figured it out by now, the teleporter works by sustaining an ender pearl that you have thrown in the air forever inside a column of water. This is possible by using slime blocks that bounce the ender pearls back up forever. Building the mechanism that controls the slime blocks is very easy. Here is all the redstone involved. As you can see, all it takes is a redstone clock, a double piston extender, and your input. When I turn the input button on, the redstone clock stops, which causes the slime blocks to stop so the ender pearl can finally land. So to actually use the teleporter for long distances, all you have to do is direct a wire from wherever you want to the input. However, I previously warned you that the teleporter has a major limitation. If you build a wire so far away that the teleporter is no longer within your render distance, then the ender pearl will freeze in time and no longer land when you turn the machine on. However, there is a way to work around this limitation, which I will show you now. In case you don't know this, the Minecraft world loads in segments called chunks. Each chunk is 16 blocks wide and 16 blocks long. When a player enters a world, all chunks within their render distance will load up. When a player starts to move around, new chunks are loaded ahead of the player, and old chunks behind the player are no longer rendered. The amount of chunks that load depends on your render distance. When a player sets his render distance to 8, all chunks up to 8 chunks away from the player will load, which you can see in this example. However, there is another way to load chunks that is completely independent of your render distance. When you try to interact with a chunk that is currently outside your render distance, Minecraft will briefly load that chunk. For example, you can create a redstone wire that transits a signal into the chunks that are outside your render distance, and then turn it on. By doing this, you will force Minecraft to load all chunks that the wire is in, even if those chunks are outside your render distance. Although the game will not visibly render the chunks, it still loads it, which can be seen in this example since the redstone lamp successfully turned on. However, to exploit this game mechanic to render the teleporter, there's one more thing you need to know. Any chunk, whether loaded due to your render distance or loaded manually, will not load entities unless all chunks within a 2 radius of it are also loaded. For example, since this minecart is an entity, If I were to send it off to the edge of my render distance, it would eventually stop loading after it reached the edge. That is because the outer chunks don't load entities, since those chunks do not have all chunks within a 2 radius of it loaded. As a result, the minecart will never finish its journey. But hope is not lost for the teleporter. As I have explained earlier, the game of Minecraft will load entities in a chunk when all chunks within a 2 radius of it are also loaded. So how do we implement this? If we want to successfully load entities contained in a chunk that is outside of our render distance, that means we need to load a 5 chunk wide by 5 chunk long area. If we did this, then the center chunk will qualify as a chunk that can render entities, since all chunks within a 2 radius of it are loaded. Here you can see my earlier example for my 500 block teleporter. When I press the button to teleport here, I don't just turn on the teleporter, I also direct a signal to all of the chunks surrounding the teleporter in a 5 by 5 area, which I have marked using alternating gold and iron blocks. These wires are not actually used to turn anything on. Instead, their mere presence inside a chunk is used to load the chunk. Since I have loaded a 5 by 5 area, the central chunk that contains the teleporter will now render the ender pearl and successfully land on the ground to teleport the player. Since the teleporter itself is not that hard of a redstone build, you can probably just look at this picture and build the entire machine from it. So if you are decent at building with redstone, just pause the video here and build away. The supplies you will need are seen in my inventory. However, I will still show you a tutorial on how to build it. First, decide where you want to place the column of water. Once decided, replace the floor surrounding your chosen spot with obsidian blocks, and then make these obsidian blocks 2 deep. Once done, build a 3 by 8 platform 6 blocks below it. We can now build the double piston extender. First, place your 2 pistons here. Place 2 slime blocks on top, and then stack 2 more slime blocks underneath the hole of the obsidian blocks you made earlier. Now place 2 repeaters here, set this repeater to 3 ticks, and put a block in front of this repeater. Place an obsidian block here, 2 blocks here, and then a repeater. Connect all of the readers together with redstone wire, and you should now have a working double piston extender. To build the clock that will control the double piston extender, place a sticky piston and redstone block here. Place a repeater here, set to 3 ticks, and then place redstone wire everywhere else. That's it. To use the teleporter as it is, all you have to do is momentarily turn off the redstone clock. The easiest way to do this is to just power the redstone wire, but I like to take it a step further and first build a pulse extender to make sure that the double piston extender stops long enough. To do this, just build a small 3 by 3 platform off to the side, and build a pulse extender which looks like this. Connect the pulse extender to the clock using a repeater, and now you're done. This pulse lengthener acts as your input, so when you want to stop the redstone clock, just power the pulse extender anywhere. To finish, you need to place the column of water. Put a pressure plate above each of these obsidian blocks, and then build up 8 blocks, so that you can place 4 blocks in a diamond shape like this. Place a water block in the middle, and the water should fall directly in between the pressure plates. Okay, now that you know how to build the teleporter, I will show you how to build a chunk loader surrounding your teleporter, so that you can teleport long distances outside of your view range. To start, first build your teleporter at your desired location. Next, mark the surrounding edge of the chunk that the teleporter is located in. If you don't know how to do this, press F3 and look here. These numbers represent your coordinates in the current chunk. To mark the edges of the chunk you're in, find when the X and Z chunk coordinates are each 0, which is one of the corners of the chunk. Once you have found this corner, find and mark the rest of the corners by looking for coordinates 0, 15, 15, 0, and 15, 15 in the same chunk. Now that you have marked the chunk that your teleporter is located in, you need to locate and then mark the surrounding 5 by 5 chunk area centered on your teleporter, for a total of 25 chunks marked. This part may take some time. Now that you are finished marking all 25 chunks that surround your teleporter, let's set up the long wire that will be used to activate the teleporter. First, decide where your input will be coming from. In this example, my input will be coming from this side. Now build a redstone wire to your teleporter. Since a redstone signal has a maximum strength of 15, you will need to use repeaters to refresh the signal when needed. When you get close to your teleporter, connect this wire to the input of the teleporter. Now that the wire is connected to the teleporter, you should technically be able to use the teleporter right now by setting up an ender pearl and then turning on the end of the wire with a button. And as you can see, everything works. Okay, now to build the most important part, the chunk loader. I have two designs for the chunk loader, so you can choose which design you prefer depending on your resources. The first design looks like this. Since all it takes to manually load a chunk is a redstone current, you can just direct a redstone wire into all of the chunks that you have marked to the main wire. Simple as that. The second chunk loader design uses a completely different game mechanic to manually load the chunks. This method uses hoppers. As it turns out, when a hopper is placed right against the edge of one chunk, facing into another chunk, and then you place any item inside the hopper, the second chunk is manually loaded. This means that the only chunk you need to load with the redstone is the center teleporter chunk, and then the hoppers will load the rest. So to build this version of the chunk loader, use hoppers to load chunks from the center chunk to the rest, until all 25 chunks are covered. Don't forget to place an item into each hopper, or else they won't work. Now that you have finished building the teleporter, you can direct this redstone wire anywhere else you want in the entire Minecraft world. Even if you are thousands of blocks away, if you just press the button, the machine will teleport you immediately. I will warn you though, that if you do plan on teleporting thousands of blocks, I recommend using instant wire instead of normal repeaters. In case you don't know what instant wire is, here's a demonstration. On the left, you can see a redstone wire that connects this button to this redstone lamp. However, as you can clearly tell, this wire travels a very long distance first to represent the long journey that your wire will travel to reach your teleporter. When I press the button, it takes several seconds for the signal to reach the lamp, because each repeater introduces a small delay. However, using the same exact setup but replacing all the repeaters with instant wire, the lamp lights up immediately. Here's what an instant repeater looks like. If you want to save on resources, you can build this version instead, which replaces the redstone block with just a block and a redstone torch underneath. Both versions work exactly the same. If you use an instant wire instead of repeaters, your teleporter will respond much faster when you press the button. One final note before you are finished. If you do plan on using instant wire, make sure you invert the signal before feeding the signal into your teleporter's input. But other than that, you have successfully built a working teleporter. If you just use normal repeaters, then no changes need to be made. If you wish to be able to teleport back and forth between two locations, then you will need to build another teleporter at the other end as well. Well everyone, that is all I have. I hope you have enjoyed this video and can use this teleporter to travel around your worlds. Good luck building, and I will see you next time.